their work schedule goes along with our practice one. And I'm thinking maybe I should tell a men's coach I'll just take the late practice all the time. So it'll make it easier for someone to come and help. But that's a real problem I have. It's just the conflict with work hours.
Yeah, we're fortunate. Because we're minor hockey, everything's after school, right? And late, because we're the oldest team, right? So we have all our practices sort of later at night. But to again, those young female coaches, it's no different than on the guys' side, right? You have a woman who's played college hockey, maybe she played a bit of pro, and she may perceive that she's ready to be a head coach right out of the gate. She wants the money. There is some money in coaching minor hockey, at least, in the GTA. I'm not sure how it is in other places, but in Toronto, if you're a female head coach of an elite level team, you can make a decent amount of money off of that. So unfortunately, a lot of them want that right out of the gate. They don't want to be mentored, or they think they know, just like, I'm sure a lot of guys who played at pro or semi-pro think, oh, I can go coach a team because I know. So, often I'm trying to say to them, well, why don't you do a year with me first? Kind of learn a little bit about the, not so exciting stuff like dealing with parents and scheduling and all that, and then go off and try it. Because I've seen far too many females get given a head coaching role right out of the gate, whether that's right or wrong. It is what it is. And then they get out of it within 2 years because they get run over by parents, basically. And the players a little bit, but it's mostly being driven by the parents at the minor hockey level. So I'm trying to avoid that attrition that I've seen of women who are desperate to get back in the game, but they get trampled, and then they never come back.
That's what happened to the girl that coached before me. She'd coached like 1 year of bantam, and she'd contact me a lot of times for practice ideas. And then all of a sudden she's a college coach, and a couple of the girls on the team were almost the same age as her, because there's a 27 and a 30-year-old on the team. And then, they just crucified her. And I know they wanted to hire a female coach, but I don't think they did a very good job of finding somebody that was ready for the job.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, and that's what we do now. So, to Dean's point in the message here, which I agree with, I'm the only one who sort of, and again, I'm not coaching next year in this role. I wanted all female staff because we were the highest level team. We had the most visibility in the organization. So I thought it had a tremendous value for our organization to see that from the top level team. But at every other non-paid coach who's female, there is a male on the staff who's a parent. And that's mostly because the moms of those players aren't comfortable coaching necessarily, or haven't been given that experience, which we alluded to earlier. But every single one of them has a male on the bench who has a little more coaching experience than them, and is also a parent. So, I do think, to Dean's point, it's no different than, I don't want a female to get a token NHL coaching job. I just looked up the WHL coach. She's not on the bench. She's in the stands. She's the eye in the sky, based on the article I just read.
Right? You could be correct. I think I think you are right, actually. I think she's on the ice for practices, an eye in the sky.
Which is, again, it's great, right? But I want whomever gets that first opportunity to, I want them to stick, right? You don't want it to be an affirmative action. Well, everyone's got a female now, so I guess we need a female like that. And that might be your way in the door, but
not the right way, though. I think people need to earn, their way, not just be handed. I don't think that serves any purpose.
Yeah, but I think now with females who've played high-level hockey and who've coached high-level hockey, I do think you can do a lot better than a token person. And it just takes a little bit of digging. So I do think that opportunity is coming soon, but I don't think it should be at the cost of, the males who can coach on the female side and who love coaching on the female side, because there's tremendous benefit to that. I don't know how to tip the scales to make it work for everyone. But in the short term, I do think this is a unique time in the women's game, of the number of players coming back who could give back at the grassroots level and help grow the coaching ranks, different at the pro level, maybe still. So I'm like I said, I want to prioritize that in terms of mentorship for now, because the parents and the kids love it. They love having female coaches on the bench. Like they really do. It's a constant refrain. Oh, can we have another female? Do you know any other females who want to coach? Everybody wants one. So if we can have more of them at Leaside, it's going to increase our value, like of our brand relative to everyone else. So it'd be silly not to do it. At least for the next little while until it becomes commonplace, and that might take another 20 years.
It may well, Kim.
Yeah, I got that
gonna
the
be a
same thing as
process.
when the ref comes to the bench with me. They'll go to my assistant coach all the time. They don't want to go to this old guy. And, they go and they start talking to him, and I'll say, if you talk to me, I'm the head coach. Or even when they come and shake hands before the game, sometimes they'll just skate up to him. He's a big, huge guy, about 6'4", 260. And they just assume automatically that old fart couldn't be the head coach. This other guy must be. So.
Well, I think I've said this before, Tom. I had a coach last year with me who is female, but dresses like a guy, has short hair. She happens to, be a lesbian. None of that is significant other than the fact, she is misgendered. Often people think she's male. And so the refs last year used to be like, oh, are you an assistant now? You just opening the door now? And I was like, what are you talking about? They're like, isn't he the head coach? And I thought, well, there's so many things wrong with this statement. I'm just not even going to touch it with a 10-foot bowl. And I was like, no, she is not the head coach. I am the head coach. I might need to be demoted. That's a whole other conversation. But, I thought that was interesting too. It always gave us a little chuckle. I laughed last year. I had, this other coach who's fantastic. And then I had one of my former players who happens to be Black and, all female staff. And I thought, man, how many times has this happened in women's hockey? This is a little, we might be a little unique here. But I became sort of
Grant
like
McEwen in our league. In our league, Grant McEwen, they're going U Sport now. But they won our league, and they had a total female staff. So,
I think
and they did a really, really good job.
It can be really powerful. And I find, no different than the girls as players want to collaborate and share and have that shared mission and shared vision. With all female coaching staff, I feel that same way. It's very collaborative. It's not sort of my way or the highway. I'm the head coach, therefore you do what I say. I found that it's got the same vibe I felt as a player being with all females as it does with the coaching staff. So there is a power to it in terms of everybody's approach as well. Not to say that we wouldn't, there wouldn't be some value of having the male approach sprinkled in there as well. But it really does, visually to the outsiders, it has a value. But I found it also has a value internally in the way we plan, in the way we communicate with each other, and the way we communicate in game with each other, right? Like just all those little things. As you guys have said, it's different. Females are different, and so to have a whole staff of that, a whole team, really, 25 of us, all female, is pretty cool.
Kim, do you think? Like I personally would hire 3 females to coach a national team. How do you feel about that?
Ooh, and it's hard, right? Knowing that level and not having quite played there, like you want the best coach available. That's the challenge, right? I think you want who is the best coach, no different than you'd want to have the best winger, the best goalie, right? Irrespective of anything, you want the best players to be there as a player. I'm speaking from a player perspective. So I don't know. As an observer with daughters, absolutely, I'd love to have females there. as someone who coaches in minor hockey and these girls are desperate for role models, of course I want females to be there. But I can understand from the player's perspective why, they might look at something different. Like I use, and again, I apologize. I don't know if Mike Babcock's the best example, but if Mike Babcock's like, hey, I want to coach the women's Olympic team, maybe not now, but maybe 2 years ago, if he said, I want to coach the Olympic team, don't you think Hockey Canada would just give him the job? Like I have the sense that they would.
They
and
would.
I'm not saying that's bad, and I think the
They
players
shouldn't. They shouldn't. In a million years, they shouldn't.
Well, I'm not saying him specific, but like if an NHL coach said,
I'm saying any NHL male coach, never having worked with female hockey, regardless of their X and O knowledge, I would take 3 females that have the X and O knowledge that you have, and all players that have been in the program have. Can they work together? Will the players, female players, throw them under the bus because Mike Babcock is better? That's the issue with that team right now, is that they have better coaches available that have coached female hockey in Canada, and females that have coached female hockey in Canada that have far more emotional intelligence to coach females and at least equal or superior knowledge of the game. That's my take.
well, I think you have to have someone who's coaching in the female game. I personally agree with you. I don't think an NHL coach is the right solution if they haven't got experience on the female side. The question then becomes, is it a male who's coached female hockey or a female who's coached female hockey? But I think of that, more for, the development of the game and the understanding of the game. And, I would love to see some innovation in how our national team plays or how women play in general. I think we've talked about that before. And is that going to come from someone who's already in the female game and sees where those weaknesses are or where those potential changes are? That's more likely to happen than someone coming in and inserting, the NHL style of play into the female game, I think personally. So I think for the evolution of our sport, I do see the value of it happening more internally. But again, I'd love to see all females. I'd love to see Vicky be the head coach. Like, perfect.
I'd love to see Carla McLeod in there.
Yeah, Carla, Danielle Goyette. Like, again, all these women.
I'm going to give you an assignment, Kim, because I've done this with Danielle, I've done it with Carla, and I've done it with 2 other female coaches that I know through the national program. And this is what I'm going to ask you to do. You're the head coach of the national women's team. Who would you want on staff to work with you? And if you were an assistant coach on the team, who would you want to be the head coach? That's your task, because that's the essence of whoever gets selected, is their ability to work together. And that's the only issue I have with that assignment in hiring a coach, because how compatible are they? That doesn't mean agree with one another. They have to disagree with one another. Some are born to be head coaches and can't assist. Some are strong-willed, open-minded, outspoken. Some are quiet, soft-spoken. You have to work together, whoever it is in whatever role. So I'm saying if they made a decision, you have to know each other and you have to understand the parameters of what you bring, what you offer, and feel valued in your role, whether you're an assistant. The head coach, of course, has to be able to make it work, make the chemistry come to fruition. I believe it can be done, but if you just randomly hire coaches without thinking about the group of coaches and the tasks that it entails, the enormity of it, that's what's most important. So think about that one. I'll talk to you later on a phone call about it, because I really believe that decisions in the future are going to have to be about that when hiring a staff for a national team. Now, not necessarily the under 22 program, but you're looking at commitment, their desire to coach, moving up, wanting to work at higher levels. And right now, the experience of people who have been in the program voluntarily on the national women's side, under 18, under 22, are not happy with the being involved. They just weren't able to contribute and offer what they thought were their ideas. And it was just sort of difficult to fit in. And I sympathize with that.
And
So
is that because they're sort of being dictated to? Is that I've only been there once as a strength and conditioning coach. I was never there as a camp coach.
I think it might be, what should we work on? How should we work on it? Having an idea of what needs to be done, what they need to work on, the big picture, a little way to accomplish the big picture. I know the people I talk to I can have these conversations with. I coach them. I know how they think, and I think we have enough respect for each other to agree to disagree, but argue about that. And that's the essence of a good staff, a great staff. It's the teamwork of the staff that precludes the teamwork of the team. So,
I'm on it, Wally.
all right.
Too bad Katie Stone's not Canadian. I'll just say that. She'd be my number one choice.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
US should get her back in the fray. She's probably done with that, but she's one of my role models in coaching, and not just because of her longevity, but the way she approaches everything. And I'm fortunate to have a couple players who played at Harvard for her. I've been fortunate to speak with her on occasion about her coaching, and I just think she's a tremendous role model in the female game. So
Now I asked Lisa Haley this question, and I just said they have to be a former player in the national program. That would include you. It doesn't mean Olympics. And
that's okay. I'm not sure I want the job.
no, you have to think about that. Because when I asked Lisa Haley, I said, Lisa, you could be the head coach of two other national women's players because you've been there and done that, and you know them and they respect you. You've had experience already coaching at Olympics. But you also could be an assistant and be the mentor coach. I'm just saying that's part of the chemistry of whoever makes those decisions. And I think that kind of thinking just has to go into it. It's pretty high level thinking. And I'm not sure what happens, Bob, in the WHL, in the NHL, American League, head coaches. Do they hire their own assistants in the NHL?
I think for the most part you hire your own, but not always. Sometimes they have people in their system, and it's strongly suggested that you take that person on or group of people on. I don't think it's a cut and dry, but I would say in most cases the coach gets the most say in his assistants, and I think that's a very big decision to make, because you can make the wrong one there and it can end you too. So it's you've got to have the right people that blend without question.
How does the GM fit into that?
I think, again, that varies. I think usually most GMs, when they hire, I mean, I've seen where they've let a GM go and they bring in a GM and the GM doesn't get to change the staff. So I think for me, the right way is the GM should hire the head coach and the head coach should hire his assistants with approval of the GM.
Yeah.
That's my opinion, but I don't think it always works that way. I would say generally it goes that way.
So Wally, at Hockey Canada, are they all are they hired with the eye of a full staff? Are they hired piecemeal? Like how is that process
You
work?
know,
Make change.
all I know, I basically helped select the coaches of the under 22 team before the under 18 program. And I had a plan. The first thing I did was a three video clip breakdown to over 20 applicants for coaching positions with the under 22 team. Based on that breakdown, I assessed their technical knowledge and understanding of the game relative to what I knew. And I was able to narrow down to a short list of 6 people to interview. And that was all I really did. I didn't conduct interviews. But I just wanted to be sure they knew enough about the game, because I had coached at the national team level. I know what the players of that level knew. So hiring coaches coming up, they had to have a real foundation of understanding of the game technically. And of the 6, there were a few that had a lot more to learn in terms of X's and O's, but they couldn't be inadequate. You know, they had to be open to learning and growing, and that was it. After that, the interview went on. Usually it's like, in my case, Tom Rennie wasn't the CEO, but he conducted the interviews that a number of people, and he did the video task in that interview. And in the interview, we talked about the clips and the video assignment, and he asked other really important questions. So I took his idea and applied it to shortlist the top 6 that would get the interview with the CEO. And I don't know who did the hiring or who made the decisions, but I assume it was the head of Hockey Canada. And in today's case, I think it would be maybe on the guy's side, Scott Salmon with, they have a scout there that's had NHL experience, and Tom would be involved as well, but it's a different scenario than the female game. Is it Gina? I don't know. Was it Mel? I don't know. I just think that a process of selection to evaluate their technical understanding of the game, and in the course of the interview, finding out about the emotional intelligence of coaching, situational coaching, behavioral coaching, you can make a decision that should be better. But I'm just saying, there's people now that could be head coaches, could be assistant coaches. It's just there's a bigger short list in my mind, because I know more females have technical knowledge of the game because they know the game and they experienced it and played it at a high level. Well, Dean, I'm just wondering, Dean, if you got any thoughts on the overall part of the conversation that you played into. You know, you're mentoring Romania, the association, and let's say you're in Tom Rennie's position. What would you do?
Buy a new car.
Well, once you've done that, you've got to make decisions on, and it's a difficult job.
Oh yeah, I think when you're talking about Wally, it's a good question to ask about how do you construct a coaching staff. I don't know how they do it, and I think there's probably better ways than others to do it. I think you've got to make sure that there's a real sound integration of all the jigsaw puzzle pieces, and how do how do they interact with each other? I think it's a very valid point. I don't think there's a shortage of people with the X's and O's. I think there's a shortage of good people with the emotional intelligence and the empathy. Not just looking at the female side of the game, but even putting a male coaching staff together. I mean, that's what I've had more experience with. And I think now, as I get older and I get more experience, probably in the last 15 years, I see that chemistry is so important. Even 20 years, I would think I started to go back. I looked at I think Tom, I don't know if Tom's still on, but he mentioned something about Grant McHugh, and I just clicked on their website while he was talking. I couldn't quite hear what he was saying. I noticed on the men's side, they've got Mike and Sean Ringrose kind of as two of the coaches on the male side. And I think I've heard of Mike's name. I don't know them very well, but it kind of made me wonder, I'm sure they're brothers. It's just interesting to me that you've got two brothers on a team. So when you've got two brothers, I start to think, well, they're going to have pretty good knowledge of each other and how each one has strengths and weaknesses, and they probably grew up fighting as brothers do. But they also know each other's, ultimately they'll have each other's back. One of the big things that I've seen in coaching is, from a staff perspective, is a lack of trust sometimes. And I've been involved in situations as a head coach primarily, but sometimes as an assistant, where the staff isn't pulling together the same direction. And I'd be interested to hear from everybody on this call, like, with Bob and Rick and yourself and Kim. I've had some truly absolutely horrible experiences as a coach within the staff, let alone with so-called problem players or problem political situations within the team. So I'm just talking from a staff perspective. And in a short-term competition like the Olympics, I mean, I don't know if Hockey Canada is still putting teams, like coaching team staffs together a year in advance. I think I just read somewhere they hired that Dominic Ducharme, their junior guy, is a full-time position to but be part of 4 different events over the next year.
Tournegate.
The Olympics. Yeah, so I think, I don't know what their policy is there, but I think there's a real need for a coaching staff to have that emotional intelligence and that empathy and that trust. Because if you don't have it within the staff, I mean, you're doomed for failure. So, I mean, I throw it right back out to you guys because you got a lot more experience than I do.
So, Dean, did you remember the toe licker I had on my staff?
Sorry, which, Tom, I can't see you. I can't hear you much.
The toe licker.
What the heck is that?
I couldn't hear you. You're gonna have to type
Rob?
it in the chat box, Tom.
What is a toe licker?
Oh, the toe licker is my fitness guy. He takes my goalie out for breakfast.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
let's not get into that.
It's a springtime, so she's got runners on, and he says,
Tom, before you go any further,
runners.
just Tom, stop. Wally posts the stuff on YouTube. Don't get into any details. Like, don't.
Anyway,
I know where you're going with this, and
situation.
let's not go into it. I'm trying to save you from libel and slander and whatever else. Wally, delete all this.
Well,
Wally, you'd have to cut that part out.
yeah, I distinctly will. I didn't hear it well enough, and I don't think it recorded well enough. But
I didn't either. But don't even go there. Let's not.
well,
This isn't the venue to air dirty laundry. We can talk about generalities and abuses of power and hierarchy and trust, but let's not.
What I'm trying to say, Dean, is there's people come in your staff that they're qualified at something, but you don't really know them.
Yes.
And then things happen right out of the blue that you have no idea. So the lesson is know something about people before they get on your staff, so that you're not going to be blindsided by just really weird stuff. And like I had a goaltender coach that he never came the second half of the year, and I didn't bring him back, and he was just couldn't believe that I wasn't bringing him back. And I said, well, well, you didn't come. He said, well, I watched one game. And I said, well, that's not being a
Commitment.
coach. Our goalie was struggling and I was working with her. I'm not a goaltender coach. And he was just really mad at me for not taking him back. So when you choose your staff, you make sure you choose a good one.
Well, and I don't think you always have the ability to choose, so that's the issue, and that's sometimes it's inherited. It's like what Wally's saying, like how does Hockey Canada construct a staff? Do they first bring in a head coach and interview for that, and then say you've got the ability to select your own, but I want you to take this person, or and that's just a general question I think that's being thrown out there is how do people construct their staffs, because you'd like to have the ability to do a thorough interview process and to get to know people, but oftentimes you have to select from a wide body of people that you don't really know intimately, or you're forced to inherit people and you have to work with them, and then you learn about some of this stuff as time goes on.
Well, when I was in the program,
Critiquing Hockey Canada either.
when I was in the program, like under 18 and under 20s, the three major junior league presidents and people from Hockey Canada interviewed, and they selected the staffs, and you might not even know who the other people were. Or
Yeah.
you didn't know. Like I met them for the first time when you met them. So I don't know if that's the case now, but that's what the case was in the 90s.
Bob, did you guys do anything then to try to develop the team within a team, like from you guys as coaches?
We had a couple of conversations on the phone, I think, and the first time we met face to face, we were 2 days from having the kids come to camp. So on the one under 18 team, which was not ideal, but you know, even the way they selected the players was not ideal. We ended up with some players that weren't at that level, and from all three different leagues, right? But the leagues got to, like as coaches, we had very little input into the players at all. I'm not sure who picked the teams, but
Tom, Bob, I can only speak being interviewed and hired in one experience, but I would say they have enough knowledgeable people at Hockey Canada to discuss and have the discussions that we're having in making the decision on hiring, particularly on the guy's side. They would know the chemistry of your staff to a degree because they know you and they know who they're bringing together to work together. And so when I look at World Junior teams, and I have the same concerns as you, is do they trust and respect each other to work together so that they are one with their team and will get the best result? And that's when I was interviewed. I think I was on the short list of maybe 7 people for the 2002, and I really respected Tom. And the one question he asked me, and there was 2 other people in the interview that were executive people of Hockey Canada, and I honestly said to him, and he was taken aback, I said, Tom, I respect you to make the right decision. You know, whatever decision he made, I mean, he's looking at the team of people. And whether I would get selected or not, I felt I could work with anybody in a support capacity. I did not want the head coach job. And when I left there, I thought I had a good chance at it. And it worked out pretty well. But that, you know, when people like that are involved, and you know, they're a pretty professional organization. The conversations that they're having, I trust they're having them and doing things the right way. Now, Bob, historically, was your staff fairly compatible? Did it trust and respect each other?
oh yeah, no problem, no issues at all, actually, Wally. So you know, I don't know exactly what the whole process was in that selection. I mean, we we were tasked with some technical stuff that we had to submit, and and so forth and so on. But we never met each other. The coaches that I worked with, I had no personal knowledge of them whatsoever before we actually were selected to coach. But the synergy was good. There was never an issue that I'm aware of, anyways. So it was good. I mean, I had no problem with it. It was just that's how they did it.
Now, Tom, I think you brought up the point. Chapter 2 of Angie's book, Summer Hockey, Chapter 2, Graham James, Where Were the Parents? And in that book, her brother who wrestled went to camp with Graham James. She writes about it in the book, to try out at Moose Jaw. They were from Moose Jaw. The family grew up there. And he was very uncomfortable with Graham, and he pulled himself out of the program. 16-year-old boy. Very uncomfortable. Now, I believe in the book she describes an experience that he witnessed being interviewed by Graham that I won't share on this videotape, but it's the kind of thing that I don't think he told anybody at the time except the family, and nobody spoke up about it. But it happened. And I think the problem is people don't speak up about those kind of things, because what he did with him as a 16-year-old was shocking in my mind. And the fact that people won't say anything, they don't speak out, that's the issue. Like, there's things that you have to speak out on. So him not being assaulted, but you have to read the book Chapter 2 to really appreciate, wow, that really happened? And of course, he went on, he wrestled a couple of Olympics, didn't choose to play hockey, but he read the situation where the two players that suffered under his exposure couldn't react. They put up with it to try to play hockey at the highest level. So I think
I probably know a lot more about the Graham James thing than a lot of people, because obviously I knew Graham, and I've coached players that he had coached previously. I know some RCMP officers that were involved in this. There was a lot more than two players, and there was a lot more happened long before he was in Moose Jaw that should have been reported that wasn't reported. And at the time, people would not speak up, or when they were asked to lay charges, were afraid to lay charges. So this goes back. There's a lot of people that should have spoken up that didn't, and it didn't happen, unfortunately. And it's awful. I mean, some of the things that I know of that are just unspeakable, to be honest with you. And how he got away with this for as long as he did is beyond me.
well.
And I coached Troy Kennedy, Sheldon's older brother, as well, and that whole family is. I don't know if they'll ever recover from some of this stuff, but I'm certainly not an expert on it. But it's been a tough, long road for a lot of those people.
And those are the things that are, serious, extremely serious. Like, they've harmed people, and when we're talking ethical coaching, we're talking minor hockey, and is whacking a kid on top of the head with your hockey stick serious? Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
And is sitting a kid when he's 8 years old, is driving 300 kilometers to play games at 8 years old, that valuable. So I'm curious about Kim's circumstance in her association of carrying the teams differently at that age group. and competing internally versus competing externally and putting all those extra pressures on people. Those are ethical decisions that have to be made, and I think there has to be more sensibility there. So,
Well, I
anyway,
think a lot of those decisions are made on, Wally, on associations making decisions because that's what their parents want, and they want their kids in their association or their hockey program or whatever. So I sometimes coaches don't get to make those decisions. They're made for them, right? Like, I don't agree with tiering hockey at a real young age. I don't get it. I mean, I think there's other programs that if parents really think their kids need to be in other programs, they can put them in spring programs or summer programs, which I have very mixed feelings on those as well. But anyhow, I think it's handling kids is not easy. And it's really not easy for people that coach that don't have kids and don't understand kids and haven't raised kids, especially at those really young ages.
Rick, what's your thoughts on tiering at what age?
I'll start with it's not real hockey comment. When you say the small ice games, the novice situation right now, that's the biggest argument that comes up against it. It's not real hockey. I want my kid to play real hockey. That goes back to when I started coaching. And just a quick anecdote, be the early 80s, and I moved into a new organization, and they had tryouts for 3 Tiny Mite teams, which at the time was 7, 8, 9. We had 40 kids or whatever on the ice, and on a Saturday morning they said, okay, let's go upstairs and pick the teams. I was new to town, so the fellow that was helping me, I said, why don't you go up? You know everybody up there. I'll stay on the ice and run the session, because they hadn't provided for that in their process. He said, well, who do I pick? And I said, well, you got your son, my 2 boys, and you know what kids, we were bringing a group of recreational kids up from a smaller town, and then take the ones that the rest don't want. And that was the way our team was selected. And we played a couple of games amongst ourselves and lost by double digits, and tried a couple of other teams and lost again. So I went to our parents and asked them to okay me running basically a hockey school until after Christmas. And I got the resistance again. It's not real hockey. That's not what we signed up for. And I said, after Christmas, we'll join the circuit. We'll play in tournaments. But I said, these kids just aren't ready to compete with these guys. Long story short, by the end of the year, we beat both of those teams and quite a few others along the way. To answer your question, I don't have an answer for when it's proper. I believe I tier my own teams to the top end, the middle end, and the lesser end, if you will. You call them Eagles, Hawks, and Falcons. I trained them all the same when I was doing it. They all had the same exercises, but they did it within their peer groups within that overall structure. They were able to do it at their own pace, and in my opinion, they all progressed because of that, as opposed to allowing the dominant players to dominate all the situations and win all the competitions. When you take that concept into competitive situations with league play and so on, obviously opposing coaches will exploit that. But I also played my teams. My lower tier team played together, and they learned to survive on their own out there without somebody taking the puck all the time. If they wanted it, they had to go get it, and they were very quick to pick up on that. And that brought their enthusiasm and their activity level up. So I don't have a simple answer, Wally, and I don't believe there is a simple answer. And I think the biggest problem is it's not real hockey if you don't do that, and if you're not able to compete on an equitable basis across the board. So we make do with the best situation, the best solution we can provide for the situation. That's been my experience, and I've used it since that time.
This is a question I think's been asked for a lot longer than we've been involved in hockey, and nobody has come up with the right answer. And I don't believe there is a right answer.
Well, Rick, I wanted to compliment you on your approach. Really, the first half of the year is development, and the results will come. And can coaches develop like you did in the first half? Do they have the tools and the resources, the wherewithal? Well, they try their best. They do need mentorship. That's something that we've experimented with and trying to find some models for development that they could follow. But it's a lot easier to develop with half ice hockey because there isn't a score clock yet. Once you have the score clock, I think what you say about compete is so important. Effort and being able to compete in sport. That's a life skill. And that's something that I think in the communication of what you're trying to accomplish with your players, that's one of your life skills. They're going to learn to work hard and they're going to compete, working harder. And the line between house hockey, generalizing, is it casual, don't care? I call it careless. Are they learning those life skills playing house hockey?
And I have that same question.
Yeah. And I think even in house hockey, you're on a team. You have a responsibility to work hard, to listen, being coached. It's not about developing bad life skills. And I think that's what you play the game for, to be fit. And it is fun if you work hard and you put in the effort. But if you don't try and you don't compete, you're not learning life's lessons. So I think that's still possible in house hockey to make those points relatively to the degree that you do with the group of kids you got. But I like your point, and that's where tearing sort of established ability that's doesn't really make sense until they mature age-wise, physically, they physiologically, emotionally develop much later.
Wally, can I just add something to that? You're talking about the house level and learning life skills, and I agree with you totally. But a lot of parents, they've got their kids in house league hockey because they don't want the commitment. And so they don't feel it's necessary to be at every practice, or if we've got something to do with the family on the weekend, we're not going to attend a game or whatever. So again, it's a tough situation, I think.
Well, in house hockey, I think you might allow that. I mean, they got holidays. When parents of a AAA midget team and a high-level soccer team that my granddaughter was on go away on a holiday before during the playoff, that's not right.
I agree totally.
And that's something that needs to be addressed up front at that level. It wasn't, and it occurred. So the culture and the expectation isn't clarified. At the house level, I would accept that.
Yes, so would I. But
And
I think that needs to be understood at the beginning.
Communicate that, but when they're there, when they're present, when they're practicing, they're listening.
Then there's an expectation.
They're trying to do what you ask them to do. And when they're playing, you want them to compete. And if they're frustrated, you don't want what to happen when they shot a puck down and the kid emotionally lost it, Angie's boy, and literally could have broken his neck. That's an extreme behavior that really, any one of us could have been guilty of. We would have been just as frustrated as that coach. But no, it's good stuff, Rick. And as usual, whenever you speak, I highlight with my highlighter because I'm gonna put that in for minor hockey people. That element of not tearing too soon. I think Adam is whole ice. You can tear. Novice, I don't think there is tearing now in novice. I don't believe there is, and that's healthy. And it is.
Yeah, you make the first team, second team, etc.
Yeah.
They still
Yeah,
do.
they have that.
Manitoba.
There's hundreds of kids like Trails West. They evaluate them and put them with skilled players, or do their best to do it anyway.
Yeah. Well, I shared the story of Kerry Bracco with his running the novice program in Springbank. The selection process, evaluating skill, thinking, and compete. 3 zones, and they move kids. Small group of high-level kids that were moved to one end, and over the course of the time, they gradually sorted out 3 groups. They worked on those 3 elements of practices with skill levels within a team identified. They won all city championships, whole ice hockey, in SO Minor Hockey Week, Springbank. I think it might have been 12 or 13 championships.
Yeah, it was a pile.
Yeah, but they never got the jobs back. They had 2 Division I teams, and the executive said, "No, you've got to have one." Both Division I teams played in the city final, in the SO final.
Mm-hmm.
So the model of development, selection, the right age, how hard they worked, how competitive they were, they judged that. They saw that. They evaluated it. Not the kids that had all the great skill, that had put in all the extra time and money that were fancy. They might have scored really high in the skill station, but boy, in the compete, when you got them grouped against relatively equal people, you could judge whether they would compete or wouldn't. So they made a good selection. That's the point on selection, is take those 3 words, understand what they mean, identify them, score them, and pick your teams based on that. And it worked out. So anyway, it's a model that we tried to adopt with P3 Sports, and we delivered in Medicine Hat and in Cochrane at the novice and lower levels. So they have basically Eagles, Hawks, and Falcons, 3 skill levels, 3 stations, a skill station, a compete 1 versus 1 race battle station, and a game station. But each kid was within their own group. And they finished the practice with cross-ice scrimmage with kids of equal talent. In fact, they began every scrimmage with one-on-ones matched up within their skill station before they went to 2-on-2s, 3-on-3s, 4-on-4s, 5-on-5, 1 puck. So it's a good model, a development model. It worked so well, but yet, how do you get people to adopt something that works? And everybody's an expert. So, and Rick, we tried to deliver that model out in Strathmore, and I don't know that I believe they still have a contract there trying to deliver it, but we went on and hands-on mentored, and we only had 1 coach that still did things his way. I thought it would work relatively well. What was your take on that, following that model?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Probably, yeah, because I was a participant in that. Actually, they don't have the contract any longer in Strathmore.
Okay.
And I'm not sure what they're doing for the coming year. They started last year and then they dropped it partway through the year. But I'd like to introduce something else in the discussion too, and that's that 3-letter word fun. Like, what does that really mean for you? What does it mean for the person on the other side? And Dean's smiling. You know, fun for a highly skilled player is quite a bit different for one who's struggling just to keep his feet underneath him. They're both valid interpretations, but trying to meld that into one word, one environment, one culture is a challenge. I've always struggled with that. I've played lots of hockey. I've played very good hockey, and I've played with some guys that just want to clown around all day. Clowning around is not fun for me on a hockey rink. I play it for a different reason, for fun and for real. I don't play with it to be the class clown. That has to be considered in all of the definitions of, is this fun or not? It's kind of a word we just throw out there and say it needs to be fun, but what does that really mean? Thoughts?
Good points, Rick. Really good points. Well, listen, we're just about 4 hours.
And I actually have to run.
Anybody else got anything else they want to throw in before I sign off here? Thanks
I
for-
think it's been
No, it's good.
Polly. Thank you.
Good hearing the ideas.
Well, I'm
It's
glad
Snowy
I
out to go
could jump
for
in for a
rides.
couple of hours. So thanks, guys. And Rick, I like your point on fun there. Maybe we can pick that up next time.
Always willing to talk.
Did you have that conversation, Rick, with your teams you coached?
Over time, from time to time, for sure, we did have that discussion.
Yeah. And that's important. Okay, really good, everybody. Thank you for your time. And really glad to have had Angie on today. It was really good. Okay, take
Thanks,
care,
guys.
everybody.
Thanks, guys. Talk to
See
you
you
next week.
later. Bye-bye.